I'd like to welcome you all to the first of the 2018 How to Talks by Postdoc series. Today we have Dr. Melanie Grubisha, who will be talking about whether learning can be fun. Dr. Grubisha is in Rob Sweet's lab in psychiatry and translational neuroscience, working on molecular mechanisms in schizophrenia, and also works in the clinic as an attending physician with some of the homeless population here in Pittsburgh. So without any further ado, Dr. Grubisha.
So thank you. Thanks all for coming. Like Carrie said, I am interested, both my research is in brain-related stuff, my clinic, so I'm a psychiatrist, so I treat primarily severe mental illness. So schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder in the community, the people that are very severely affected. So I think the take home there is that I'm really interested in the brain, right? I both research-wise and clinically treat bad brains, but even good brains, I think the functioning is fascinating. Which sort of got me on this topic of can learning be fun, and part of that, as we'll see, is how do we understand our brain? How do we understand how we learn, how we focus, what distractions are? And we'll go from there. So by the end of today's talk, I'm hoping that we'll be able to describe the cognitive theory behind distractions, what they are, and like I said, what we're asking our brain to do, to name at least 4 approaches to combating a distracted classroom. And then towards the end, I'd like to familiarize you with a free interactive technology that's designed for the classroom, something I found really effective in giving lectures that keeps people more attentive. So, common classroom distractions. I feel like it's getting worse and worse and worse with like every year, right? I mean, I have a 15-month-old daughter, and I'm thinking by the time she goes to like kindergarten, they're probably going to give her an iPad, right? Like on her first day. So these are just things that we're used to. If we tried to list what are some common distractions, is there anything that comes to mind as like a common classroom distraction?
Phones and laptops.
Absolutely. Phones and laptops. Anything else? So some things, I broke this down into categories like external, right? Social media, on your phone and laptop. Email, texting, apps or games. But also you have your internal distractions, right? You have what I call cognitive multitasking. You're sitting in class and you're thinking like, I need to stop at Aldi's on the way home. What do I need? Like, I'm making fajitas tonight. I have to remember to get onions. And then you're thinking like, shoot, did I fold the laundry? And so your brain's trying to handle absorbing this information, but also thinking about other things and trying to multitask. There's also your imagination, right? We've all been there, and like you're taking notes, and next thing you know, you're like drawing a flower, or you're like daydreaming. I don't know if you've seen The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, right? These elaborate daydreams, but our minds are really creative too. And sometimes it's something as simple as you're looking at this and you're really paying attention, and you see this cloud, and then you start thinking about thunderstorms and wouldn't it be cool if, and your mind just kind of goes, okay? So these are all common classroom distractions, and as the educator, things that we're going to try to combat. But what really is a distraction, right? I asked you to say things like, what are some common distractions? Somebody said phones. What makes a phone a distraction, really? It's actually something that blocks our efforts to pursue a goal that really matters, but it's context dependent. When you're at home in the evening and you're sitting on the couch and you don't have anything else to do and you pull your phone out, is that a distraction? And you're scrolling through Facebook and it's Thursday evening and you're relaxing before bed. That's not actually a distraction, right? That's just a way to pass time. Now if I'm giving this lecture and you're scrolling through Facebook, that's a distraction. So it's context dependent. It's only if it gets in the way of pursuing a goal that really matters. So what is that goal? So the goal, it's something you're setting for yourself, right? So you're asking, when somebody comes into your classroom, you're asking their brain to do 2 things. It's to create and plan high-level goals. What do I want to get out of this lecture? What do I want to learn? Versus our ability to control our minds, to keep those in check, to resist the temptation to scroll on Facebook, to resist the temptation to daydream, to resist the temptation to think about our grocery list. So you're having these sort of 2 conflicting things going on at the same time. And as we age, this changes. So what's interesting is there's really no change as we age when they've done the cognitive testing in our ability to sort of create and plan and to focus. What there is a change with, and we see decreasing in age, is our ability to tune out irrelevant distractions. So that's why it gets harder sometimes as people get older to focus on your conversation in a crowded room. Part of it is hearing issues, right? So you can have hearing related or age related hearing changes, but part of it also is just the mind's ability to block out what's irrelevant sort of decreases as we age. But our ability to actually focus does not. So we can capitalize on this, not that we're like teaching a bunch of 60-year-olds usually, but capitalize on this by helping our class to continually reorient to what that goal is. So some strategies to do that. The first one I think is transparency. So setting the goals in the classroom is really the job of the teacher. Yes, you're asking their brain to multitask when they come in and to focus and also block out distractions, but it really helps if you give them very clear goals for the session. So ways to combat this distracted classroom: be transparent, outlining your approach to every session. Today I'm going to start with 10 minutes of lecture. Then we're going to go through some group exercises. Then we're going to reconvene at the end and we're going to review. Today we're going to start with a short video and we're going to watch that, and then we're going to use that to launch our discussion. So letting them know exactly what to expect and what you're doing. Sort of along with that would be things like temporary technology bans. So be transparent about it. Say, you know what, no phones for the first 10 minutes of class because we're going to rehash what we did last time. So no phones or laptops. After that, I understand if you need to get your stuff out, right? We don't want to do a permanent technology ban. What if a student needs their laptop for some sort of accommodation, right? You shouldn't single them out. But doing it on a temporary basis and explaining why and being transparent will get your students a lot more on board with you. Also much less likely to take it out on you in evaluations, right? And outlining clear learning objectives. So saying, here's what I want you to take away from this, if nothing else. And then at the end we can revisit that and make sure that those learning objectives were met. So that's one way to sort of get your audience to help them focus, combat that distraction, and get them engaged. Another way, so PowerPoint. PowerPoint initially was revolutionary, right? This was a way we could use technology. And then what happened? I love this famous quote. Most people use PowerPoint like a drunk uses a lamppost, for support rather than for illumination. So the pendulum swung the other way, and we get so dependent on our PowerPoint that we think, you know what, everything's up there, and guess what, your classroom realizes it too. And so they're going to say, hey, can you send those slides out after class? Because they were sitting there not paying attention, and they think I'll just go through it later, everything I need is up there. Okay, so ways to combat that. We can still use PowerPoint. I think it's great. But mix up your media. Embed some photos and videos, or use music, use demonstrations, so you can have something up there sort of as the launching point to discuss, but don't rely on that. Don't read off your slides. Sending content ahead of time. Okay, so depending on what you want, don't send them like, hey, watch this 45-minute Vimeo lecture. But you can send a few things ahead of time and then really pare down your slides to be discussion points. Say, hey, if you guys had a chance to flip through the slides, or say we're going to spend the first 10 minutes sort of just reviewing the content that I kind of already sent. Intersperse discussion questions and group exercises. Again, that can go along with being transparent. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to start with 10 minutes of lecture, guys. I'm going to tell you what psychosis is, I have a DSM material and everything, but then we're going to walk through a case together. Okay, I'm going to present a case of somebody I saw in clinic, and then we're going to do their mental status exam together, we're going to do their assessment together and see what we think. And then we're going to end with a little bit more maybe, didactic style about medication management or something. So intersperse that in there. Brief handouts. I know we don't like to kill trees. Keep them brief. But things that I might have bare bones, maybe I have a graph, and that's all on my slide. But I give you that with room to write, and I expect you to fill in what should be on my slide, right? And those are your own notes. So putting some of the nidus on the classroom to say all of the material was presented, okay? And it's also a way to help their mind focus on just what's most important, right? So when they actually have to write things down, you can't possibly write as fast as I can talk, especially me, right? I can just go and go and go. You can't possibly write down everything I'm gonna say. But if I'm giving you something and saying, you know, take notes on this, you're forced to pick out what you think is most important and just write down those few notes. So that's another way to not lean too heavily on PowerPoint, but to use it for the visual aspect, but then asking them to really engage. So we've talked about sort of what distractions are, some common distractions, some easy ways to combat them using things we're already familiar with. Before you leave today, I wanted to introduce you to at least one version of interactive technology. So this is a new thing. This encourages participation through, you know, questionnaires, surveys, games. There's some options, my two favorites. So there's something called Poll Everywhere. This is a commercial software, so you have to purchase a license to use this. It's not super expensive. But then there's Kahoot, which is free. I don't know if anybody's heard of Kahoot. So Kahoot is, like I said, one of my favorites, probably because it's free. But it looks like this. So you go and you create your free account. And then as the creator, you can create quizzes, jumbles, discussions, surveys. And this is a way to encourage your class to participate with you, and they get to use their favorite thing, which is their phone. So you're actually asking your class to get their phone out. So I want to show you how that works. And you're just going to go to kahoot.it. So it would be under My Kahoots. So I made one here, like a postdoc seminar. And we're just going to do classic, so everybody is going to get, it should be asking you for a pin. Okay, perfect. So you want to join the game with 620-8526. And you can make it as anonymous. It'll ask you like for a little nickname for the screen. Yeah, you can use your initials, you can make something up. Perfect. All right, so there's 4 questions on this. This is actually just a survey, just to show you that you can do that. So I think student participation during lectures enhances the learning experience. Okay, and you just vote using your phone. And it'll give you like in real time, and it's kind of fun when you have a full classroom and you're watching the bars all change. And this is a way to poll your class. Okay, I often find it difficult to stimulate discussion in the classroom. Sometimes I totally agree. I am familiar with resources to enhance the interactive nature of lectures. Perfect. I would use an interactive resource if one were available. Perfect. Okay, and so we can end our survey. So, like I said, that was just an example. And then I also, that's a great way sometimes to poll people before. The other technique that I have found is really helpful is for this learning objective. Sometimes when people first come in, to throw up a quiz with everything you want to cover in class, right? And chances are they're going to get a lot of the things wrong, and they're going to realize, boy, I don't know a lot of this. Redo the same quiz at the end and watch your sort of your pre and your post, and it really empowers the students to say, hey, I actually learned something, and I know exactly what I learned. Like when I came in, I had no idea what era the dinosaurs popped up in, right? And now I know because I paid attention, and I knew because those were the questions you asked me ahead of time. It's sort of an interactive way to introduce your learning objectives. They go, I guess if I pay attention, I'm going to learn all of this stuff, right? So let's try just a few more questions. This is actually for the quiz, so it'll ask you for another pin. So just enter 787 629. Yes, 787629. Perfect. All right. So this is just an example of how you can set up a quiz, both pre or post, to go ahead and either set up your learning objectives, review your learning objectives. So for example, after we talked, what is a distraction? Perfect. You can also set it to keep score. Sorry, I forgot to turn that off. Which cognitive component has evolved faster? Right, so the ability to set goals and design plans exceeds our ability to control our minds and block distractions, which is why as educators we're trying to use all of these techniques to reorient to what our goal and what our plans are for the session. All right, transparency in the classroom means exactly. So all of these ways are ways to be transparent in the classroom. Outlining your approach, outlining clear learning objectives, using things like temporary technology bans, being transparent about your reason why you don't want them to have their phone or why you don't want them to have their laptops out. Last, one way to facilitate discussion at the start of class is by exactly, sending content ahead of time. So it probably goes without saying, but people do not like getting called on at random, right? So you want to put it on them and let them participate as they feel comfortable, but you want to encourage that any way you can, whether it's through interactive technology saying, hey, I'm asking you to answer. And it could be in a completely random way. Nobody needs to know, if somebody put the red answer. Nobody needs to know who that is, but you're encouraging them to participate. Sending content ahead of time, encouraging them to come with their questions, and really putting it on them.
I have a question.
Yes.
What is the risk of if you send information ahead of time that people just aren't going to show up because they think, oh, I have it, I don't need to bother?
So, it's a risk. I think along with that, what I found to be helpful is when you send the content, again, be transparent and outline, I'm sending this content because here's the things I'd like to discuss. Or, when we get there, we're going to start class with 10 minutes of reviewing this material. I understand if you can't get to it ahead of time, but you'll get more out of it if we can have discussion-based instead of lecture-based content. So the risk, I think, can be mitigated to some extent by being transparent about exactly what you expect them to do and why. So I'm sending this content ahead of time not because this is literally all we're going to cover. I'm sending this content ahead of time because I want to delve into it deeper, and so this is like the background you're going to need to really understand. And that's what I've found to be effective, is sort of combining that with transparency. So, hopefully, like I said, I wanted you to at least be familiar with that. We wanted to say thank you for listening. I'm very transparent every time she does something good. I tell her thank you for listening. It tends to work most of the time. She is a little pistol. But are there any questions? All right. Well, I'm happy, like I said, that was just one example, but I'm happy to sit down with anybody if they want to learn how to use like Poll Everywhere, if they're not familiar with the Kahoot and they wanted to try a little bit more with that, or if there's any other information I could provide, I'd be happy to do that.
Kahoot is, if it's a full class, like 40, 30 people,
Mm-hmm.
it still works?
It does.
Limitation?
Yep. And so what you can do is you can set how much time you want each question to be up. And so that way, if somebody isn't paying attention, right, if you have 40 people and like number 38 there just really is, and you're like, it's not going to hold up the class. You say, you get 20 seconds to respond. If you get 38 out of 40 responses for that question, that would be great. But you can have that many people join. And like I said, it's actually fun because as the bars are kind of changing in real time, it gets people engaged. And I like it because it's free. All right.
Thank you very
Well,
much.
thank you.
Yeah.